Chapter 19, The Child at the Brookside. So just to remind you that Hester and Dimmesdale have decided that they are going to break free from this strict Puritan society and go off into the woods and live their life of love, their genuine family life, which is, of course, what any parent would want. So I'm just going to point out right at the beginning here, there is the Brook, I would say, is another character in this chapter at this point. It is very heavily symbolic, and I think we're going to see lots of references to the Brook. So just keep in mind that it is representing a barrier. You could think of it as a barrier between the known world, which would be the Puritan society, and the unknown world, which is, nature in itself, which I have mentioned here as well, but also just like the unknown, if they were to go off and live in the woods or go with the Native Americans or go to another colony, they don't really know what's in store for them if they were to do that. So this Brook is definitely a symbolic force of nature. So Hester begins by saying to Dimmesdale with a lot of confidence that he will love her dearly and that she will love him. She even says, I know whose brow she has. So she says that Pearl has his forehead, that, there are physical features that represent Dimmesdale. And Arthur says right away, this has been a fear of mine. I have had much alarm when I see her sometimes because he's afraid that his own features were in her face and that the world might recognize it. But he says that she mostly looks like Hester, which is a relief to him. And Hester says, no, not mostly. A little longer, and thou needest not be afraid to trace whose child she is, because she's reminding him, we're going to leave. No one's going to care. But how strangely beautiful she looks with those wildflowers in her hair. Again, a child of nature. It is as if one of the fairies whom we left in dear old England had decked her out to meet us. Like she's reminding us of our origin, where we came from, not where we are right now. It was with a feeling which neither of them had ever before experienced that they sat and watched Pearl's slow advance. I mean, they're sitting together as parents. They've never done that before. In her was visible the tie that united them, of course. It was also revealed she had been offered to the world these 7 past years as the living hieroglyphic in which was revealed the secret they so darkly sought to hide, all written in this symbol, all plainly manifest, had there been a prophet or a magician skilled to read the character of flame. So clearly she is their child, and they are a family, and this is the secret that they have been hiding and will continue to hide for as long as they're in that Puritan community. So they think about this idea, but they also, there's a reference here that even if they are always living in secret, that once they get to heaven, they will dwell immortally together. So even though maybe they're not living as a family now, they will live as a family after death. And so this is something that would be, comforting, certainly to Dimmesdale, who seems the least confident about leaving his position. Let her see nothing strange, Hester says. Don't let her see that we're a couple. Let's not scare her by seeming like we're different. Let's just focus on a strong connection. Pearl has strong affections. Hester's confident that they will love, that Pearl will love Dimmesdale because Pearl loves Hester. And the minister is nervous. He's like, my heart dreads this interview and yet yearns for it. So he so wants to be closer to her, but he's also afraid because, of course, there's a responsibility that comes with being a parent. There's also the fear that she might reject him or that his feelings might be so strong he can't handle those feelings. I mean, there's nothing here that says that. I'm just thinking on my own, which is what you should always do when you're reading. Why would he dread it and yearn for it? We can think about all kinds of reasons why that might be. So it also says, yet Pearl, twice in her little lifetime, he says, hath been kind to me. The first time thou knowest well. The last was when thou ledst her with thee to the house of yonder stern old governor. So 2 times they've been together. So just remember that when she was at the governor's house trying to advocate for herself to keep Pearl as her child, Pearl went over to Dimmesdale and took his hand. So she was sort of initiated a very sweet gesture. And then they also stood together that night, in the middle of the night, when they were coming back from standing beside the deathbed of the old governor. Hester and Pearl joined Dimmesdale when he was standing on that scaffold, and they held hands together. So they have been together as a family, and there has been some tenderness already. So that would hopefully give Dimmesdale some confidence that she will be sweet to him. Just where she had paused, oh, here's the brook, and I even wrote symbolism. And there's a lot of connection to Pearl and the brook. Quiet that it reflected a perfect image of her little figure. So the brook is reflecting her like a mirror. This image, so nearly identical with the living Pearl, seemed to communicate somewhat of its own shadowy and intangible quality to the child herself, like the unknown. It was strange the way in which Pearl stood, looking so steadfastly at them through the dim medium of the forest gloom, herself meanwhile all glorified with a ray of sunshine that was attracted hitherward as by a certain sympathy. So it's like nature has sympathy with her, with Pearl. She is standing in sunshine, even though she is in the dark forest. She is also reflected in the water. So that just tells us that she is part of that natural world, and they are not. Hester and Dimmesdale are not. In the brook beneath stood another child, another and the same, with likewise its ray of golden light. So Pearl is nature. So there were both truth and error in the impression. The child and mother were estranged, but through Hester's fault, not Pearl's. Since the latter rambled from her side, another inmate had been admitted within the circle of her mother's feelings. So what this is saying is one reason that Pearl could be hesitating is that Dimmesdale's there. Since she left to go play, Dimmesdale has shown up. And somehow Pearl recognizes that there is closeness between them, and most likely she is jealous. I have a strange fancy, says the minister, that this brook is the boundary between 2 worlds, and that thou canst never meet thy Pearl again. Well, this is sort of true. It is the boundary between 2 worlds, the natural world where people can be themselves, where humanity is recognized, and the Puritan society, which is very strict. And he's concerned that because Pearl is so aligned with nature and Dimmesdale is so aligned with the Puritan society, that there is no way they can be connected, even though they are a family. It's making Dimmesdale nervous. He's like, come on, get her over here. Hasten her. This delay has tremored my nerves. He's just very, very sensitive all the time. And so Hester tries to call Pearl there. Come on, let's go. Come over here and meet us. Can you leap like a deer? She tries to coax her. And what's interesting is how Pearl responds. She fixed her bright, wild eyes on her mother, now on the minister, and now included them both in the same glance, as if to detect and explain to herself the relation which they bore to one another. So she's putting it together. She's a smart little girl. For some unaccountable reason, as Arthur Dimmesdale felt the child's eyes upon himself, his hand went to his heart, which is where he has injured himself, if you remember. So then Pearl stretches out her hand and points at her mother's breast. And beneath in the mirror of the brook, there was the flower-girdled and sunny image of little Pearl pointing too. So like the reflection points to Hester's breast, and so does Pearl, because remember, she's reflected in the brook. Symbolism again. So she's pointing to the sin, which is what the Scarlet Letter is for. And Hester's like, come on, why are you acting so strange? Come to me. And Pearl's continuing to point to her mother's breast and frown. She's getting very angry looking. Maybe you've already figured out why. but we're definitely going to get confirmation. Hester gets annoyed. She's like, come on, get over here. I'm getting angry with you. Leap across the brook, naughty child, or I'll come and get you, is what she says. And Pearl has an absolute fit. She bursts into a fit of passion. She starts shrieking. And finally, Hester figures it out, which I figured out too, that, Hester's not wearing the scarlet letter. Remember how she threw it, in a fit of passion, basically, to like, here they are, she and Dimmesdale are in the forest, and, she's finally able to express her feelings and be with him and be with Pearl, hopefully, too, as a family. And she threw that scarlet letter into the forest, and it's laying very precariously next to the brook. And Hester realizes that's what Pearl is upset about. She says, Pearl misses something that she has always seen me wear. Of course, the scarlet letter. And the minister's like, well, whatever, like do something, do whatever will pacify her if you actually love me, because I can't stand this noise and how upset she is. So Hester turns to Pearl and she says, Pearl, look at thy feet. And notice that she says it sadly. So the acknowledgement that she has to put the scarlet letter back on makes Hester very sad. It's like her return to reality, her return to the truth, which is that she is a sinner and she has been condemned by the Puritan society. There, on the ground, by the side of the brook, and Pearl looks and sees that scarlet letter there at the margin of the stream. And I underline this again. This is another symbolic reference to the fact that, like, that scarlet letter almost disappeared into nature. But of course it didn't. It's there where it can be recovered. And Hester says, bring it hither. Sassy Pearl, she says, come thou and take it up. Like, this is yours, honey. You come get this. I'm not bringing it to you. I thought that was bold and funny. And it just shows Pearl's character. And Hester's frustrated. Oh, whatever. What such a child she is. I have so much to tell you about her. I must bear its torture yet a little longer. And then she's like, but only a few days until we have left this region and look back hither as to a land which we have dreamed of. So she's like, I only have to wear this for a little while. We're gonna get out of here. She's very committed to their dream of getting away and having a proper life together as a family. Hopefully, but a moment ago, as Hester had spoken of drowning it in the deep sea, there was a sense of inevitable doom upon her as she thus received back this deadly symbol from the hand of fate. She had flung it into infinite space. She had drawn an hour's free breath, and here again was the scarlet misery glittering on the old spot. This is her reality. It also makes me wonder if their dream of getting away is not practical, if it's really just a dream, because the way she feels, this inevitable doom, the hand of fate, that suggests to me that she's not going to get away from it. Next, she gathers up her hair and puts it back under her cap. So I'm sure that also freaked Pearl out to see her mother's hair down, looking so feminine. I'm sure that made her very uncomfortable too. So Hester puts her hair back into her cap, and now she looks gray. A gray shadow has fallen over her. So I just think a lot of this here, this is good example of evidence you could be using for a paper. It certainly reinforces the theme. So if you're ever being asked, how does Hawthorne use symbolism to make his point? Well, clearly this chapter, with the use of the brook and the symbol and the message that comes with putting back on the scarlet letter, all of these things are foreshadowing that their fate is going to play out. They're not going to get away, is my thinking at this point. And then she says to Pearl, do you know me now? Will you come across the brook and to your own mother? And then now that she is sad, so it's like, are you happy? You've made me miserable. And now will you come over here? And Pearl says, yes, I will. And she acts like everything is fine. Now thou art my mother, and I am thy little Pearl. So you and I together, we are in reality. We are not in the magical forest. So in the mood of tenderness that was not usual with her, she drew down her mother's head. This is, I thought, also really interesting, and kissed her brow and both her cheeks. So she kind of blesses her mother for putting back on the scarlet letter and accepting her fate. And she even kisses the scarlet letter, which makes Hester angry. She's like, that wasn't kind. When thou hast shown me a little love, then you mock me. And Pearl ignores that comment. Why does the minister sit over there? Like yonder means like away from us. And Hester says, he waits to welcome thee. Come, let's go meet him. And she even tells Pearl, he loves thee, my little Pearl, and loves thy mother too. Whoa. So definitely telling Pearl, like, there's something going on here. Wilt thou not love him? Come, he longs to greet thee. And Pearl, with her acute intelligence, I thought that was, of course, she's very smart for 7 years old. Doth he love us? Asked Pearl. Will he go back with us, hand in hand, we three together into town? So again, she's asking this again. She asked this on the scaffold, if they could walk together through the town. So that's what it would mean to be a family. And Hester says, not now, my child, but in days to come, he will walk hand in hand with us. We will have a home and a fireside of our own, and thou shalt sit upon his knee, and he will teach thee many things and love thee dearly. Thou wilt love him, wilt thou not? And Pearl doesn't answer that question. And will he always keep his hand over his heart? Foolish child, what a question is that? Come and ask his blessing. So they're not acknowledging each other here. I mean, this is a decent question. What do you think? If he actually is able to live openly with Hester and Pearl, do you think he'll still put his hand over his heart? Well, he might if he has a terrible infection there because he's been cutting himself. But more likely, I would think he would not, because he would feel purged. He would feel like he doesn't have to be ashamed. He doesn't have to hide a secret. That's one thought. The other thought is that, does a sin ever really go away? Does guilt ever disappear? This is a really good question, and I think that's one reason why it isn't answered, because nobody really knows. So this is interesting. Whether influenced by jealousy or seeing Dimmesdale as a rival, Pearl would not show any favor to him, which is sad because she's done it twice before. But in this moment, when she's being asked directly to accept him as like a member of the family, but not really getting all her questions answered, she's suspicious. The minister is painfully embarrassed. Of course he is. Can you imagine like how awkward you're standing with your lover, the person who you've had this child with, and finally you can be together, and she won't look at him and she won't go over to him? So he hopes, this is foolish, that a kiss might prove a talisman to admit him into the child's kindlier regards. He bends forward and kisses her on the forehead, whereupon Pearl runs away, goes to her mother, and then runs to the brook, stoops over it, and bathes her forehead until the unwelcome kiss was washed off. So back to the brook again. So yeah, I mean, how embarrassing. So completely, she rejects not only him, but she rejects their fantasy, is what I take from this. And now this fateful interview had come to a close. Again, fate, 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 fate. I mean, your teachers might have you writing about fate. The dell was to be left in solitude among its dark, old trees, which with their multitudinous tongues, personifying these trees, would whisper long of what had passed there, and no mortal be the wiser. Nobody knows what happened in the forest. And the melancholy brook would add this other tale to the mystery with which its little heart was already overburdened, and whereof it still kept up a murmuring babble, not with a whit more cheerfulness or tone than for ages heretofore. So I think it's very important to recognize that the brook is sad. A lot of times we see brooks as happy, and just in life, I feel like when I see brooks or streams or rivers mentioned in poems and things like that or other novels, that they are considered a positive thing. Also, a lot of times they symbolize, coming of age or transformation as you go down the river. That was part of Huckleberry Finn. So here we have a situation where the brook is sad, and I think we could read this as nature is sad by how separated the Puritans are from their humanity, from their authentic self, that really there's no way for the Puritans to enjoy nature because they always must return to this place that is so against everything that nature is for.